At the recent State of Unreal showcase, CD Projekt RED finally gave us a first look at their tech demo for The Witcher 4, and honestly, a lot of us just sat there with our jaws on the floor. But hold up, don't go thinking this was just some polished cutscene to wow the crowd. What we saw wasn't a trailer, it wasn't gameplay either. It was a vision, a glimpse into the future of what the next Witcher game could look like. And man, it looks dangerously ambitious. This isn't just some hype reel, it's a statement, a promise, a blueprint. So yeah, I gathered you all here today to break down the biggest takeaways from that demo, share some of my thoughts, and explain why I genuinely think Witcher 4 has all the ingredients to become an absolute masterpiece. There's a lot to talk about, and trust me, I've got some wild things to show you. So hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to ring the bell. Let's break this down. Let's start with the basics. The game is being developed on Unreal Engine 5, and its release is still, well, a long way off. That's probably the most important thing to keep in mind right now. Also, what we saw in the demo, that wasn't the game. It was more like a dream version of The Witcher, the ideal version CD Projekt RED would like to make. Whether they'll actually pull it off, that's still a big question. What we got was a tech demo, a showcase built around the systems and tools they plan to use in the final game. The insane visuals, the lighting, the particle effects, all of that shouldn't be taken at face value. It was all part of a carefully directed sequence made just for the presentation. It wasn't live gameplay. Will The Witcher 4 look exactly like that when it comes out? Probably not, but knowing CDPR, it might come pretty close. Even in the demo, if you really pay attention, you'll spot a few graphical glitches here and there. Tiny frame drops during the forest flyover, and a bit of blur or smudging in some scenes. Totally normal. One thing that's definitely worth pointing out, the demo was running on a regular PlayStation 5 and it was hitting 60 frames per second. That's actually a pretty good sign in terms of optimization, at least for base consoles. But if I'm being honest and looking at it from a technical perspective, I don't believe the final game will run with that level of visual fidelity and hit 60 FPS on a standard PS5. I'd love to be wrong about that, but I doubt it. And hey, we'll find out for sure once the full game drops. The demo kicked off with a brand new trailer, and it opens strong. We see a manticore ambushing a caravan, the merchant torn to pieces, his entire convoy gone in seconds. And just like that, Ciri enters the scene already on the monster's trail, arriving at the aftermath of the attack. Now, if I'm being honest, the trailer itself didn't reveal anything groundbreaking, but there was one detail worth pointing out: the manticore. That thing, it's brand new for the series. We've never seen it in a Witcher game before. It kind of resembles the griffin from Witcher 3, but it's bigger, meaner, and looks a whole lot deadlier. That could be a direct hint that CD Projekt RED is seriously expanding the bestiary in Witcher 4. And judging by this first look, it seems Ciri will be going up against an entire roster of fresh, unique monsters, ones we haven't seen in the third game, in the expansions, or even in Witcher 2, which makes perfect sense, honestly. New protagonist, new region, new challenges, and naturally, new enemies tailored to Ciri's playstyle. After that, the so-called gameplay kicks in. It starts immediately after the trailer, which makes me think the devs blended a pre-rendered cinematic into an in-engine cutscene. And honestly, the transition was smooth as hell, barely noticeable. The visuals didn't dip at all, which is super impressive. From the very first moments of that scene, you can feel it. This isn't just another RPG. This feels like a full-on return of the most iconic fantasy series of the last decade. It's been confirmed that a big chunk of the story will take place in Kovir, and likely Povis, two northern kingdoms united under one crown. Players have never had the chance to explore these lands before, which already gives Witcher 4 a fresh edge. The early shots of the tech demo show off Kovir in all its glory. Ciri stands at the edge of a high cliff overlooking a massive forested valley below. The landscape is stunning. Bronzed mountain peaks contrast beautifully with the deep greens of the trees, creating this rich cinematic color palette. And even though this is just a demo, you can immediately tell the artists and tech teams put serious love into building this world. Then Ciri begins making her way down through a cave. Right away you notice how insanely good the lighting looks. Sunbeams cut through openings in the rock, softly hitting the stone surfaces, bouncing off wet walls. It all looks incredibly natural and atmospheric. As she descends the mountain, it becomes clear just how much denser the world has become. The environment doesn't just sit in the background, it lives and breathes. There are layers of details everywhere. Plants, moss, trees, branches gently moving in the wind. Even tiny snowflakes drift right toward the camera, creating this real sense of depth and presence. At this point, the lumen lighting tech really starts to shine, literally. Light bounces naturally, shadows are soft and gradual with rich transitions, and the water, it's so photorealistic that at times it looks better than real life. Yes, there are reflections, and not just static ones. They're dynamic too, especially on wet surfaces, which makes everything feel even more grounded and immersive. At this point in the demo, Ciri whistles for her horse, Kelpie. And no, that name isn't some made-up lore from the devs, that's actually what her mare was called in the books. A nice little detail for the hardcore fans out there. Now here's where things get wild. The way Ciri and Kelpie move, it's completely dynamic. Every movement between the rider and the horse is synced in real time, depending on what's happening. The terrain, the speed, even how sharp you're turning. The horse isn't just a stiff model bouncing over bumps, it's got a fully simulated muscular system, and its body reacts to slopes, twists, and acceleration. Ciri, meanwhile, doesn't just sit there like a default animation. She leans forward, adjusts her grip, changes posture depending on the angle and pace. This is all thanks to something called ML Deformer, a machine learning tool that simulates micro muscle deformations on the fly. And yeah, it looks as smooth as it sounds. When it comes to overall animation, both in combat and story scenes, the game's using the Unreal Animation framework, which is all about keeping characters looking fluid and natural, even during complex sequences. Now obviously, not every single creature in the game is going to be animated with this level of detail, but the important ones, horses, major NPCs, monsters, are going to look insanely lifelike, and that alone might completely change how we experience the game, even subconsciously. Speaking of realism, the devs also dove into one of the most important parts of any open world game, foliage. Witcher 4 is using an upgraded version of nanite foliage, which makes every single leaf fully 3D, not just a flat texture like in older games. Even better, the foliage dynamically scales in size based on how close you are to it, saving system resources and boosting performance. To make these massive worlds stream in seamlessly and instantly, the game uses another feature called fast geo-streaming. And listen, it's not just marketing jargon, you can actually see the results in action. Later in the demo, Ciri hops off her horse and starts walking through a city street. And here's where the immersion really kicks in. The world starts to respond to her presence. A guard notices her and spits on the ground. Maybe he hates witchers. A woman grabs her child and pulls them away when Ciri walks by. She squeezes through a small crowd and accidentally bumps into a guy carrying a crate of apples. The apples fall. Kids immediately start scooping them up. Then a few pigs join the party. And here's the wildest part. According to the devs, none of that was scripted. No cutscene, no pre-programmed triggers. It all just happened. A chain reaction of NPCs, animals, and physics responding naturally to the player's actions. That's next level immersion. Not just flashy animations, but real believable interactions between the world and your character. If they can pull this off across the whole game, Witcher 4 could feel like a living, breathing world in a way we've never seen before. The devs also made it clear, the people in the marketplace don't just stand around like cardboard cutouts, they talk, they mutter. Some argue, some gossip, some yell at merchants, and all of it completely unscripted. What's even more impressive is that the animations for regular NPCs are on par with how Ciri herself moves. In one of the scenes, CD Projekt RED managed to pack 300 animated characters on screen at once. As an example, they showed a massive crowd gathered to watch a street performance, and every single person in that crowd had unique behavior, reactions, and animations. Nobody was just standing there blankly. Every character felt alive. It's just another sign of how far the devs are willing to go to create a world that actually feels lived in. Toward the end of the demo, we got a quick look at a full-on stone fortress, very different from the rural villages shown earlier. The streets were narrower, the buildings were taller and more detailed. Clearly, we're in a more urban part of the world now. And then came the final shot. Ciri riding Kelpie, chasing after a flying monster that swoops above the city. It was short but powerful, a symbolic moment, a hint that a massive new adventure is just beginning. New lands, new dangers, and a completely new level of storytelling for the Witcher universe. Now, before we get too hyped, let's be clear. CD Projekt RED officially stated this wasn't The Witcher 4, but a tech demo created specifically for the presentation. So if some of this doesn't make it into the final game, well, they warned us. That right there tells us a few important things. First off, a lot of what we saw is likely going to be toned down. The demo was built using Unreal Engine 5.6, and while the tech shown is real and will be available to other developers, how it'll perform in full-scale games is still a big question. There are rumors that this version of the engine was specifically optimized to show off higher FPS on consoles, which is why the demo supposedly ran at 60 FPS on a standard PS5. Sounds amazing, right? But in reality, don't count on it. 4K resolution, high frame rates, and all these cutting-edge technologies, that's just not something the base PS5 can realistically handle right now. Even the rumored PS5 Pro might struggle to deliver that kind of performance, especially considering how Unreal Engine has always been a bit rough when it comes to consoles. So yeah, if we're being honest, what we'll likely get is a scaled down version of what we saw. But even then, the level of detail, interactivity, and ambition on display is wild. And you know what? I really want to believe that someday we'll see a game that looks and plays exactly like that demo. But for now, we wait, we watch, and we hope that The Witcher 4 will blow our minds again. That Unreal Engine 5 won't just power flashy trailers, but real living, breathing games that run not only on $4,000 PCs, but on the consoles most of us actually use. What we saw was beautiful. We saw new tech, a living world, and that spark of magic that the old games always hinted at, but never fully nailed. And even if only half of this makes it into the final release, the direction CDPR is heading in, it's inspiring. Yeah, we've been burned before, we've been through downgrades, we've heard the promises, we've seen the cinematic trailers, but here's what matters. CD Projekt RED isn't done. They're still swinging, still learning, and maybe, just maybe, they're about to turn The Witcher into something more than just a sequel, something bold, something next level.